Well, ladies and gentlemen, I wonder if I can call you all to order now. Causes that Jennifer's going to talk about tonight. It's inspirational. It's inspirational. And the more the word of Rotary is spread, the better. So it's been going since 1905, I think, founded by Paul Harris and one of his friends. I think there's two of them founded it to start with, three of them. And it's grown and grown and grown to 1.4 million members. So it's just extraordinary. So that's enough from me. What we're going to do tonight is have Jennifer talk for as long as she wishes. Then I will have a discussion with her, and then we'll open it to the floor, and you can hit her with your hard questions. I don't think she would mind how hard the question is, because she's very experienced and she'll be able to deal with it. So, Jennifer, as a businesswoman from Windsor, Ontario, it's right on the border there with the United States of America, next to Detroit. And she is a proud Canadian, so it's wonderful to have her here with us tonight. So, Jennifer, over to you.
Well, thank you for the incredibly kind introduction. And while I am not able to claim any lineage or heritage to Australia, I will say that I do have heritage a little closer to home here, and many of my ancestors from Wales. So we are a little bit more maybe tightly connected in this area, perhaps. But I am delighted to be here. I want to point out that we have our international vice president also in the audience tonight. Nikki Scott, if you could just rise and... Before I get into my formal remarks, I want to make one observation. We know that we have, and we had a chance to talk about this a little bit earlier this evening, we know that we have had in some parts of our world some struggles with membership historically over the past decade, perhaps two. And Nikki has been in the role of vice president and certainly as a director of our international organization for the past year and a half. And for the first time in I don't know how many years, Nikki, it's been, but we just had a report that came out, and for the first time, I'm going to guess in more than 20, 30 years, we are showing positive growth in Great Britain and Ireland. And so I want to, yes, thank all of you, and I want to particularly thank you for your leadership and what it is that you've done. We have a number of incredible people in the audience, of which I know I'm going to engage with all of you when we get into the questions and answers, but allow me tonight to frame my remarks around our areas of focus. And I want to start with a short story. A few years ago, I was preparing to do a media interview, and it was about the role of service in civil society. And how many of you do media interviews? I know you certainly have done your fair share. How many others have done media interviews? For those of you who haven't, you typically anticipate what the reporter is going to ask you, and then you think about what your answers might be so that you're psychologically, mentally prepared for what it is that you're about to enter into discussion on. And so I was going through this exercise, talking with my younger brother, Dave. And it was, as I say, it was about the role of service in civil society. Out of his mouth came the following words. He said, "In order to live in the kind of society you want, you have to help build it." I said, "Dave, who said that?" And he said, "I said that." And I said, "No, but who really said that?" And he said, "No, really, I said that." And we started to sound a little bit like we were a comedy routine, but the truth is it was a genuine, authentic quote that came out of his mouth. And I love these words. I love them because they tie hand in glove into what we do as an organization. And through our vision statement, it is exactly who we are. Those words together, we see a world where people unite and take action to create lasting change across the globe, in our communities, and in ourselves. Who here isn't better by being associated by and with our great organization? It's one of the greatest gifts we can give to ourselves. And the stories that we encounter through the work that we do give us a very different kind of paycheck than any other job we could ever hold in our life. So for the past year and a half, Nick and I have had the incredible privilege to represent each and every one of our members, all of you, across our Rotary world. My husband, Nick, is sitting here in the front row. He's taken 2 years away from his medical practice to be with me as we share this opportunity to meet and learn from all of our members in many different parts of our world. And I'm going to ask you to give him some applause for that. To frame the presidential travel, we decided to do it and align it with our 7 areas of focus and add one additional stop because of our polio eradication program, a standalone, so making it 8 tour stops in what I have called and determined to be the Imagine Impact Tour. Imagine being our presidential theme for the year to allow us to dream our wildest dreams and to know that we have the power to make them a reality. So the first stop in this trip was to Pakistan back in August. We spent 11 days there, and some of you who were with us last night at the House of Commons as we did an update on our polio eradication efforts know that the primary reason I wanted to go to this country was to be able to thank our frontline female health workers, the thousands and thousands and thousands of them, tens and tens of thousands of them, who every day put their life in harm's way, wanting to ensure that every child receive those 2 life-saving drops. And I wanted to be able to offer to them 2 very important words. Thank you. To thank them for what it is that they do. We had an incredible opportunity, and we're going to talk a little bit about polio later on, so I'm not going to do a deep dive into that right now, but we had an opportunity not only to meet with the women, but with the defense team, the lead members of the defense ministry in the country, the health ministers, all of the different people, our partners who have joined together to ensure that we are going to eliminate this disease And as you heard Aidan O'Leary, our partner in lead in polio eradication from WHO last night, he said, we have never worked harder to find samples. This is incredible news, my friends. We are not this close. We are not this close. We are on the precipice of eradicating the second disease in the history of mankind. Yes. And we will cross that finish line. We will take a bow. We will tilt our hats. We will have some parties. And we will roll up our sleeves, and we will continue to do what we do, finding the next things that we need to tackle. But for now, we are not taking our foot off of the gas. The second stop in our tour was to Zambia. Zambia is where we are testing another model in terms of using our public health infrastructure that we created for polio. Knowing that community health workers being able to bring service to a person's home is so much more effective than asking people to come to a center. In Zambia, we selected 2 provinces to be able to test the elimination, not eradication, elimination of malaria. Now, this is incredible because we are putting $2 million of our dollars in, our trusted partner, the Gates Foundation from polio, and World Vision, a new partner, each putting $2 million in to create a $6 million US pool. The idea being that we would train 2,500 community health workers to make sure that they could be in their communities to diagnose and treat. Now, this may sound simple, but a year and a half ago, if you contracted malaria in these rural parts of Zambia, you would walk for days to find a health clinic. And my friends, many of those people didn't make it. In the year and a half that we have had this in place in the 2 provinces where this exists, we have been able to drop the mortality rate by 50%. This is Herculean. This is huge. And not only that, we know that we can scale. We can scale beyond that to the entire country and to the surrounding countries and anywhere where malaria exists. That's not to suggest that malaria is our next program after polio. It suggests that we can walk and chew gum at the same time. We can do more than one thing. And this is an incredible opportunity for us to be able to make a profound difference, particularly where we know that children under the age of 5 in Zambia, this is the #1 killer of those children. I want to tell you a story of a father and a son that I had the opportunity to meet while we were there. We, on this Imagine Impact tour, the whole rationale behind this is that I'm bringing along notables, media, camera crews, celebrities, singers, social media influencers, those who can help use their megaphones to amplify our megaphone. We talk very well to ourselves, but we don't necessarily talk to the rest of the world about what it is that we do. And so we had a camera crew, and we were sitting in a rural part of the country. It was the golden hour. Many of you will know what I mean by that, when the sun is just starting to set. We were in a beautiful field, a rural part with a hut where my friend Timothy, my new friend Timothy, and his son Nathan lived. We sat on a bench under a tree with the cameras rolling, and Timothy began to tell me a story about how the year earlier, he started to notice that Nathan was exhibiting signs of malaria. The next day, he took him to the hospital. He put him onto his back, and he climbed onto a bike, and he rode, and he rode, and he rode. He pedaled hard. At some point, he felt little Nathan's body go limp. He then could feel his little legs go cold. He pedaled harder and faster, and he finally got to a treatment center. He raced in with his son in his arms, screaming, "Please help my son, please help my son." They were able to give him medicine, and that's why Nathan was able to be sitting next to him that day. He then told me the story of his first son, the exact same story, only it didn't end the same way. He lost that son. The cameras stopped rolling. We all took a pause. A few of us went off to varying corners to try and process what we had just heard. Timothy was standing by himself, and I walked over to give him a hug, a very slight and short man. As I held him in my arms, he wept profoundly. I lost my son. I lost my son. When I talk about our vision statement and the lasting change within ourselves, that's what that refers to. I am a better person because I got to meet Timothy and be able to share testimony of his story with all of you, so that we all know that we have an opportunity to change our planet and to be part of an organization that can literally save lives. It was a privilege and an honor to be able to meet him and his family. We went on to Uganda, where we have our first peace center on the African nation. We have now 6 peace centers across the globe, and a new one that has just been announced for the Middle East that will be located in Turkey. That's a whole conversation perhaps that we can have as well when we get into our session about what is going on as we combat what's going on with the earthquake in Turkey and Syria. We spent time in that country to be able to officially inaugurate this Peace Center, where we now have 1,600 graduates that are Peace Fellows of our Rotary Foundation, people who come from all different vocations and all different levels of professional expertise, bringing what they bring best back to their own jobs to make sure that they instill the values that we believe in, the core values that run and course through our Rotary veins. We had a chance to go into one of the refugee settlements there and spend time with many people whose lives have been profoundly touched. In this refugee settlement, there are 13 nations that are living in harmony. And they want little, but they want peace. And there's no better combination than we could have spent in that country than being able to be with people seeking peace in a country that is also educating scholars on how we can do it. So that is the third of our areas of focus, the peace and conflict resolution. Disease prevention and treatment, of course, in Zambia, and polio. Guatemala is where we traveled for basic education and literacy. I took along Grammy Award-winning singer Gabby Moreno. She is a Guatemalan singer and an extraordinary human being. We also brought along Zara Zanjua, who is occasionally a reporter for the BBC. She also works in Scotland and freelances for a number of different periodicals in this area, writing stories about how we are changing education, particularly in this trip, with a focus on girls and female teachers, being able to travel through the rural parts of the country. It was while I was there that the earthquake in Turkey and Syria happened. And ironically, on that day, I was also standing at the epicenter of what was the largest earthquake to hit that country in 1976, killing approximately the same amount of people. It wasn't lost on me that we were standing in a place where recovery was still happening. And we know that for so many of our friends, in these countries. They have a long journey ahead of them. We traveled into Taiwan to look at community and economic development. This is a fascinating story that's going to take several years and has taken several years to come to fruition, where indigenous farmers in the mountain regions are transitioning their typical traditional cabbage crops into chestnut trees. And at the base and bottom of the chestnut trees grow truffles. And they're in partnership with the university there and the government, as well as us with our Rotary Foundation grants. And while we were there, they were able to show us success in the form of spores and the growth that is starting to take place. It takes about 8 years for this to finally materialize into truffles. Now, for those of you who love truffles like I do, and Judith knows very well that I'm a truffle fan, this is little bulbs of gold. And these indigenous farmers will be able to sell them to restaurants in Taipei for high amounts of money, far in excess of what they ever would have received for the cabbage crops. But more importantly, it's reducing the amount of pesticides that are used on the cabbage crops. They're high in the mountains, and the water that runs off this the pesticides go directly into a river that feeds directly into a city of more than 500,000 people. So it's not only community and economic development, but it's the preservation of planet Earth and the safety of the water of the people who live there. Water and sanitation and hygiene. That's where we're targeting Haiti with a project that is going to cost well in excess of $1 billion+ to provide clean water and sanitation to every man, woman, and child on that island nation. It is a pay-for-play method, and it is being tested in 2, I believe, communities at this moment. Nick is sitting on their board. It is, 7 communities that it's being tested in right now. And we're finding success. We were slated to travel to go there and to be with some of our Rotary family members to see exactly what they were doing. We were actually supposed to be there just a few weeks ago, but the political situation is untenable, and we, for our own safety, were not able to travel there. We will not abandon our Rotary family in that country, and we will work together to continue the success of that project. The environment, our newest area of focus. What we've done there is we've created Monarch Mondays, a chance to educate people that every one of us has the opportunity, every man, woman, child, to do something that can benefit our environment. And planting milkweed and different things like this to protect the monarch butterflies. We've done wonderful stories that showcase the flight and migration pattern of the monarchs between Monterrey, Mexico, and the part of our home, Leamington, Ontario, which is minutes away from where we live. And the really most astounding thing is a company in Kansas, the Kansas City Rail Company, has been recently purchased by Canadian Pacific Rail. And they painted one of their rail cars with monarch butterflies and QR codes to help educate people on what they can do in their communities and how they can donate money to make sure that we are protecting the environment and raising awareness. So here's how we're doing all of these things to make sure that our world understands our areas of focus. And the final leg of this tour is in 2 weeks' time. We will be traveling with our friends from UNICEF, our trusted partners, and our friends from Global Citizen. We will be going into one of the South Pacific islands called Kiribati. If you look at it as it's spelled, it looks like Kiribati, but it's Kiribati. It is an island where 1 in 100 children die under the age of 5. We are going there for immunizations, maternal and child health. And we are going to be immunizing for HPV, rotavirus, and pneumonia. This is a story that is going to be captured by 2 different crews from Australia and New Zealand, and we're going to be able to tell the story of powerful partnerships. Our friends with Global Citizen have one of the biggest megaphones in the world, and we're going to be able to share much of this in real time about what it is that we're doing to immunize these children a project of the Australian and New Zealand Rotarians to mark their centenary as part of our great organization. So I share all of these with you to give you an understanding of the scale and scope of what it is that we're doing as an organization. We don't think small, and we are more than a club, we are a movement. And we need for the rest of the world to understand that so that people join with us. And I'm so proud to tell you, just as I started in the beginning with the growth that we're seeing here in Great Britain and Ireland, we are seeing growth around the Rotary world. During the pandemic, we grew and we continue to do so. This is not what we have seen in recent years. And what it tells me is that people need different purpose in their life. They need something that fills their heart, their soul, and gives them, as I said earlier, a different kind of paycheck. So thank you, my friends, for being here this evening to share in our Rotary story, for understanding and hopefully learning a little bit more of what it is that we are doing. And so many of you in this room are leading extraordinary, extraordinary efforts. I want to point out, Judith, please stand up for just a moment. She has been responsible for putting this entire tour and this entire comment. Stand up, please. Don't be shy. Judith has never been shy. Who has assembled this entire Commonwealth Week opportunity of activity to be able to see so many incredible things, and is the Dean of our United Nations Network. And that's another topic we could have a whole panel discussion unto itself on, leading volunteer efforts between members of our organization that align directly with different all UN agencies, because we, 43 of our members were part of the actual authors of the signing and the writing of the original charter of the UN. Jean-Luc Perrin is also here. He is also one of our UN representatives. I want to thank you for traveling here from Switzerland to be with us tonight. And I'm going to stop there because I literally could go down the path of naming every one of you in the room who holds special designations. But thank you for your kind attention. And now I'm going to come over here, and I think we're entering into a conversation.
Well, Jennifer, I think you would all here tonight agree with me. She's given a fascinating talk about the brilliant work that Rotary is doing. But why don't we start right at the sort of base level, at the Rotary clubs that there are. There are 40,000, 45,000 Rotary clubs in the world, something like that. And I mentioned in my introductory remarks that I thought there were around 1.5 million Rotarians, members of Rotary. So if my figures are right, you only need to confirm that. But how is the growth trajectory? And I ask this question particularly in an era where focus on the community has declined and interest in playing with their mobile phones and iPads has increased in its place. Let's be honest, people have gone for social media rather than all getting together in a community organization. So a lot of community organizations have been declining. How is Rotary going?
So it's a complex answer to a relatively easy question, and I will point out that some areas of our Rotary world have been in decline for the past couple of decades. I will say that this would be one of them. My area of the world, Canada and the United States, would be another, Australia being another, parts of Europe. There are other parts of our world that are in dramatic increase. That would be much of South Asia. We would see huge increases in India, in Korea, Taiwan, the Philippines. And upon reflection, and this is not scientific in necessarily in nature, the areas that were first formed are the ones that have seen decline, have seen change, and the newer areas that are members are the ones that are seeing perhaps more growth. And I think if you reflect upon what we're witnessing in countries, many African nations, particularly in India, you see the growth of an emerging middle class. And I think for many of those nations, we see people seeking opportunity to be part of something that is perhaps larger than themselves, and an ability to change and dictate how they want their communities to look. That quote in the beginning, in order to build the kind of society you want, you have to help build it. I think for those levels of society there, that's very much part of where they're going and where they're leading. So we quite candidly have been studying multifaceted ways to be able to address where we're in decline and where we're in growth. One of the commonalities, regardless of whether you're growing or declining, is keeping members. And that is a very large part of what we're focused on, is ensuring that when someone joins our organization, that we provide them with a meaningful opportunity, a meaningful responsibility. It's not acceptable to just show up to a meeting and perhaps have a drink and sit and chat with some friends. Fellowship is wonderful, and that's we join for service and fellowship, and we stay for service and fellowship. This is what our surveys tell us time and time again. But people need to have something where they feel that they're actually contributing to a bigger picture and to something in our world. So it's a bit of a complex issue, but it's one that I'm proud to say, through the pandemic, we grew. And if I can give you one incredible observation, we have 1,100 members in Ukraine. We have 1,100 members in Russia. And in Ukraine, we have grown in membership during the war. That is absolutely enough. It's almost unbelievable, but it's because of the fact that we are busy hands right now in that country, surrounding nations, and the rest of the world, making sure they know that we believe that they can be successful.
So what you're saying is that people will come together at a Rotary meeting and remain members of Rotary, not just for the social experience, but if they're convinced that this organization is doing something useful, therefore they're contributing to something useful. And this would be the great strength of the thing you're most famous for, the Polio Plus program. I mean, polio has not been totally, but it's like 99% eliminated, I think, polio. So you've got that 1% more to do. I think the world would perceive, I mean, there are all sorts of people who have contributed to this, and no doubt governments have, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and so on, but the world would mainly identify Rotary as having been the driving force of eliminating polio. And just having been a Rotarian myself, it's something that's talked about at ordinary Rotary Club meetings, and that does give people a bit of inspiration.
It does, and the fact that we have collected, I mean, we started this campaign, and our partners know that. They give us full credit for the fact that we started it, but we couldn't do it alone. We didn't have all of the tools in our toolbox, if you will, to be able to do this alone. But we had the audacity to say that we could eliminate this from the face of the planet. And that started in the Philippines, where, quite frankly, they said, we want to eliminate this from our island nation. And then when we started to gather partners, quite honestly, they laughed at us. They thought, how on earth are you ever going to do this, and how are you going to raise this kind of money? But slowly but surely, we gathered together the WHO and UNICEF and the CDC and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and Gavi the Vaccine Alliance. And every one of us brings something different to the table. And that's the power of what we can do through partnerships. And I am a big believer that polio has taken us from our adolescence as an organization into our adulthood. It showed us what we could do when we actually harnessed the power of being able to work together on something so much larger than ourselves. And so we are in the home stretch. And let me tell you a very short bit. back in October in Geneva, we had a joint event with the WHO. And I mentioned Aidan O'Leary was with us last night at the event at the House of Commons. And Dr. Tedros was with us while we were in Geneva at this event. And we had a small dinner, probably, 100 plus people after one of our events. It was meant to be a small group. And at the time, when Dr. Tedros was making his remarks, he was thanking Rotary for starting this journey and bringing all of them along on it. And he made a very bold declaration. He said, Rotary started this, and when we cross the finish line, I will be the first to nominate Rotary for the Nobel Peace Prize. And that was a very bold declaration on his part. And he sat down and we were sitting together, and I said, Dr. Tedros, I said, we're in this together. We have a partnership. We will cross the finish line together. We will be recognized together. And he said, but no, you started it. And I said, yes, but we're together. So we're having a little bit of an argument there on that. But nonetheless, Bill Gates made a similar declaration in January. He said that when we cross the finish line, because we all know that we're this close, he said, the very first call I will make will be to Rotary. And I think that this is important information to share because so often we hear from our Rotary family members that how come we don't get the credit? How come we don't get the credit for what we're doing? Bill Gates gets the credit, WHO gets the credit, others get the credit. Really, we shouldn't care about the credit. We need to care about getting the job done. But our partners are very kind in sharing that they understand the role that we've played, and that is advocacy and fund development. And we have been responsible, our family of Rotary has been responsible for raising more than $2.6 billion and immunizing more than 2.6 billion children. This is no small effort. This is absolutely something that will be celebrated in memoriam.
So you will move as you get that final 1% of people with polio. You will move to focus from what you were saying about your experience in Zambia on the elimination of malaria, which is gradually happening. I had a lot to do with the Global Fund at one stage, which has been very instrumental. And also, I don't know if you know Richard Feacham. He's British, so Richard Feacham. He was the CEO of the Global Fund, and he went to the University of California in San Francisco and set up a body there, which I was on the board of. I was a trustee of, and we focused entirely on malaria elimination. So progress has been made. There have been countries like Sri Lanka in recent years who have eliminated malaria. And you're focusing now on Southern Africa because South Africa has pretty much eliminated malaria, I think. But as you get further north, success is more limited.
I suspect we have many common friends in Lady Roz and Peter Sands and other people who are working on this incredible work together that we've had a lot of opportunity to be able to unite behind this. Malaria, let me be very clear. I did not declare tonight that this is our next area of corporate priority. We are testing through our programs of scale different ways to test different grant opportunities to see how we can do other things that are large-scale, impactful, and sustainable. And that's one of the biggest things right now that we're really wrapping our heads around is from a scientific standpoint, and I don't want to get into too deep of a dive on this, but impact is a word that when you take it from a general conversational standpoint, yes, we can create impact, however you want to define it. From a scientific perspective, it means something completely different. And we're going down a very deep path right now in our organization on how do we quantify and qualify what impact means and how do we create sustainability in the work that we do. And so this is a very big part of the dynamic of our organization that is part of the conversation that we're having with all of our partners as well, to make sure that we're all going in the same direction. And one thing that I didn't mention in the very beginning, but is notable, is that our 7 areas of focus align directly with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And we know from what we've heard, particularly at the United Nations General Assembly back in the fall, we are not on target. And we need to pick up our pace, all of us collectively, as non-governmental organizations, as philanthropic organizations, as government, to strategize on how we collaborate together, because this is not one individual organization's victory to make our world a better place. It's all of us rowing in the same direction to make sure that that happens.
And you're obviously concentrating on quite a wide variety of countries. I think, how many countries have you yourself visited as the world president? Somebody said that you have visited 60 countries since July. Is it 60?
Well, it will be toward the end of the year, relatively close to that number, yes.
And one of them is Kiribati.
Yes.
I would be the only person in this room who's been to Kiribati.
Have you?
Yeah, I have. I know the capital of Kiribati is called Tarawa.
Yes.
Not many people would know that.
We're going to the North Island. You need to give me some travel tips.
Well, I'm not sure that I've got a lot to tell you about it, but it's such a remote country, and those countries need. I mean, it can only survive with outside support. Otherwise, the communities simply couldn't live there. They would all have to move. They'd have to migrate, because they just couldn't sustain just on fisheries alone. They just couldn't sustain life. So it's good that Rotary is engaging with countries as remote, and it's not very populous, Kiribati.
Well, and it really is part of Leave No Child Behind and Give Every Child a Future. GCAF is the acronym for that, from our friends in Australia and New Zealand. But the story of Kiribati is one of these immunizations and ensuring the protection of children, but it is also a very dramatic story of climate action and climate change. And it is predicted that within the next possibly 80 years, if our world does not change, those series of atolls will no longer exist. And so it is a part of the story that I know we're going to be telling while we're there as well.
Yeah, it depends what happens with the tectonic plates. So in the case of Kiribati and Tuvalu, they're actually not sinking, they're rising because of the shift in the tectonic. But believe me, I'm an expert on these countries. So you should ask them, well, what is actually happening? But exactly, you should do what you can to help them. That is fantastic. Now, I suppose the last thing before I throw it open to the floor to ask you about is, are you the first woman ever to become the world president of Rotary International?
I am.
So, what percentage of Rotarians are women, and are there still? I mean, Rotary started for many, many years was just for men. I know in Australia the Rotary clubs were men only, and then there were clubs which were women only as well, but not Rotary. So now all Rotary clubs have to allow women, do they?
Technically, no. And I'm working hard on that. Actually, to be completely candid, let me begin by saying that we have between 26 and 27% of our membership is actually comprised of women globally. There are some parts. 40% in London. Well, I was just going to say that in some parts of our world, it's as high as 48%, 40% in London.
40% in London, but in the UK, is it 40%?
Thank you, Governor Bryan. I didn't see you sitting there, and I appreciate you giving me the statistic on this exact part of the country that we're in. There are parts of our world. Let me tell you that with our youth movement, our Rotaractors, which are 18 to, it was 30, we've taken the age limit off of it. Gender parity, they've achieved long ago. This is a non-issue for them. If you ask them about gender, they will tell you, we don't look at gender, we look at skill. And it's something, it's not even part of the dialogue that they have. We do have an opportunity, and I like to present it from the perspective that it is a business case. If you, each and every one of us as business owners, if you looked at your business and had an underperforming market share, what would you do? You would do something to change it. And if you look at the global population, we're approximately 50-50, almost halfway male and halfway female. So we have an opportunity to draw from people who we could help create gender balance in our organization. Not because they're women. We want the best people in our organization. And one of the things that we have been accused of, and I'm asked this question frequently, is, are you elitist? Are you male dominated? And we are not elitist, but I think we need to be very careful how we position ourselves because we demand excellence. And that is what we want in our members. We want people of purpose, people of influence, people of action. We want the best of our communities, the best of our societies. So that is something that we need to do a good job in framing as we bring members into our organization and not just to tick boxes. I'm incredibly proud to serve in this role and in this capacity as our first female president. And in large part, I believe it helps to break down stereotypes and barriers, and it allows people to see us perhaps a little bit differently than they thought we were before. And for younger men and women, and perhaps older, those of my generation and above as well, if they can look forward and say, you know what, if she can do it, so can I. Then I hope that opens doors for others to think a little bit differently about who we are.
And so Rotary clubs invite people to become members, as distinct from people who are elected or whatever other system. I mean, well, let's not canvass that, but they invite people. And my recollection is that they try to ensure, they don't have 12 butchers and 6 bakers. They have a diversity of members in terms of their occupations. They try to have, I know this from Australia, they try not to have more than one person from each occupation. Is that still the case?
Well, actually, when Paul Harris...
I'm not sure that makes it elitist, but that it stops it, presumably, becoming, a butcher's club or whatever it might be.
Well, I will say that is no longer the format, and it's been long-standingly different, but it did start that way, and that is how our founder, Paul Harris, formed our organization along with the other members who were our founding members. They did have a singular classification policy, and that's actually why Rotary clubs grew really fast, because if you were a banker and there was only one club and you wanted to be in the club and you had a 20-year wait before the other guy knocked off, you started a new club. And so consequently, consequently,
well, that was
yes,
clever.
It was very clever.
Why scrap that system? That sounds excellent.
But the strength of our organization exists now because of diverse perspective. And if you had a club of all bakers, you would only look at things through one lens. And because we bring together different... Yeah, and so because we bring together different age, different race, different culture, different geography, different sexual orientation, all of that allows us to look at things through a kaleidoscope of opinion. And when you're looking to solve incredibly challenging problems, we have to be able to challenge each other. And because we are non-political and non-religious, we create a safe space for people to have dialogue where they can show up as their true, authentic selves and be able to contribute to a dialogue about how to make our world a better place. And I think that is absolutely worth extraordinary celebration.
Okay, well, let me throw it open to all of you. Is there any of you who wishes to ask the world president any question you might like to ask? While we're waiting, I just was going to ask you a question about yourself.
Yes.
Because as the first woman president of Rotary International, that's an extraordinary achievement. You're a businesswoman and you've had a kind of media business, right? So tell us something about that. So what has your business done? Help people present to the media.
So I formed a company 27 years ago and called Media Street Productions in Canada. And we formed as primarily a media production company in broadcast, doing videos and commercials and different things like this. We morphed into being able to do communications planning and public relations council, media training, different things like this. And storytelling has always been at the heart of what my vocational life has always been about. And so that very much has led to how I formed the Imagine Impact Tour, telling stories, going around and collecting these stories, using my vocational background to essentially field produce my presidency and to be able to work with, tomorrow we're going to be having a wonderful interview. I'm not going to say who it's with because, knock wood, it's going to happen and we don't get canceled, but a very notable person here in the community. And that ability for us to be able to sit down and have conversation that allows people to tell stories and use this vocational background is something that I'm happy to be able to have brought that to the table.
Well, I think we'd all agree you're a great talker, so yes. Hang on, we just need the microphone.
Before we go to a question, I want to just make an observation, and maybe I'm wrong. I know there's a number of people who are milling about in the area outside the doors, and I don't know if people are not brave enough to come in. If somebody could just check, because if we've got people who feel,
Yes.
if they feel that they are rude in walking in, this might be a chance. No? Okay, there's been a lot of activity going on as I've been looking back there. Okay.
Okay, now.
All right.
There are two of you together, so one of you asks the first question and the other the second.
Good evening, and my name's Joe Birchall. I'm the Assistant Governor for Brian in London. And you've really stolen my thunder a little bit, but I want to continue, if I may. I've been in Rotary for 52 years, so I've seen many changes. I've also got, through Rotary, many friends in other countries. And so my question really is about economics and criteria, because I'm not going to mention the clubs, but I've got friends in Italy who belong to 2 or 3 clubs. They don't let in women, only men. Not only that, but unless your income is at a certain level, they won't let you join the club. I've got other friends in France who are the same. These are very good clubs. They do wonderful work. I've been to them all. They've, in fact, my own club, which is in the south of London, Lewisham and Penge, which is a very poor area, the Italian clubs have visited us many, many times, and we can't compete with what they do to us when we visit them to what we try and do over here. Now, as I said, they all do wonderful work, and that's great. Do you think that in this day and age, Rotary International, that you're the head of, should bring in some sort of criteria that allows all people, and you said it yourself just a few moments ago, all ages, adults, I know if they're all Rotaractors that join afterwards, of all ages and creeds, etc., to be mandatory that they be allowed to join Rotary to do good work?
It's a very, very good question, and thank you for it. One of the things that I will point out that I think is obvious, but I'm going to point out the obvious, Rotary clubs are autonomous, and they can choose to function as they choose to themselves. Rotary International dues are set uniformly across the globe. Everyone pays the same amount of dues to Rotary International. Clubs then take on their own structure. So in some clubs, they build in to their club dues paying for their dinners for the entire year. So it can cost thousands of dollars to join that Rotary Club, which is incredibly prohibitive to a younger professional or someone, a mid-level professional, or quite candidly, anybody who just doesn't want to spend that much money on belonging to a club like that. That can be very prohibitive. There are some clubs who take incredible pride in doing so. On the other side of the equation, we have clubs that have formed a very popular trend right now, are early evening clubs, where there's no meals served and they get together. You can buy a drink if you choose to, or a non-alcoholic beverage, a cup of tea, whatever it is that you want. You can get together, you're in and out in an hour. You figure out what it is that you want to work on collectively, collaboratively, and then you go home and perhaps share your meal with your family. There are clubs which now bring families together. My brother and my sister-in-law's club is one of them. They meet on varying different days of the week, depending on what's going on. It's all young families, and the kids attend. And I will tell you, my 11 going on 12-year-old niece in just a couple of weeks is forming an Interact club. And that's because she has been, whether they know it or not, they're listening. They hear what's going on. And she's got a whole series of young people in her school who are incredibly excited about what they can contribute to the world through the Rotary movement. So it's hard to, in direct answer to your question, to level the playing field. It really isn't the purview of Rotary International to do that. It is the purview of the club to be able to do that. But I will give a personal commentary, if I may. I think that clubs that refuse to have flexibility are clubs that we will no longer see within 10 years in our organization.
Yep, thank you, Jeff. Add my little bit to that. Do what I did. No one would have ever invited me to join Rotary, so I founded our own club. You mentioned earlier you were going to talk about Turkey. Now, my question is that Rotary gets involved in a lot of these things, and we're not a disaster relief organisation, but it's incredible how we get involved with what we've done in Ukraine and Turkey, and I think a few years ago it was in Haiti, and even now. So somehow we've got to get that word out, that the amount of people, what Rotary does with these various issues around the world.
Thank you for bringing that up. And it's something that our Rotary Foundation trustees are really grappling with. It's something I speak with people about absolutely every day, because whether it's man-made or climate crisis, they're increasing. Every single day we see different challenges that are in varying countries, and every one of them we have Rotary family. In the situation with the earthquake in Turkey and Syria, we don't have members in Syria, but you know what? We're prepared to help the people of Syria, as we are with our family, our Rotary family in Turkey. When the war broke out in Ukraine, within a matter of days, our members came forward with more than $15 million into our disaster response fund. We responded immediately. With COVID, hundreds of millions of dollars. I can't even begin to quantify, because some of it has gone through technically our Rotary Foundation, and some of it has gone directly from clubs to, at the time, frontline responders for PPE, for surveillance, for all different things that we needed at that point in time. We are not, and we have said all along that we are not a frontline responder, but in many ways, our members are telling us differently. And it is a struggle right now, and maybe struggle is perhaps too strong of a word, but it's something that we're grappling with, because we have trusted partners. Shelterbox is one of them, formed here in the UK, and it is one that we work with immediately when we don't provide that kind of housing as an organization, but we do steer our members into that space. But with our disaster response fund, we have set aside specific money, particularly when the floods hit in Pakistan. We have similarly done this for Turkey and Syria, and The amount of money as of last Monday was $800,000 that has gone into our disaster response fund for Turkey. We already have disaster response grants, which are going out. And what's unique about these is that they're meant to have immediacy. So if there is a demand for warm blankets, for coats, depending on the area of disaster that's happening and the scope and scale, we are responding very quickly and very efficiently. With the war in Ukraine, we have already expended the $15 million and will continue to support through the use of our global grant structure. I don't want to get technical here, but that means global grants are larger scale grants that we're able to work on, and those help us with more of the recovery side of what it is that we really are intended to do as an organization, to provide assistance on more of the rebuilding of community and supporting them in the long term on how to be able to recover and do it successfully. But we know this is not slowing down. And so we're really having conversations internally right now about how we can best utilize our resources and how we can best structure our response systems financially to be able to deal with these different situations. Because honestly, we just want to make sure that people are taken care of. And I know as well as every one of you, when we turn on the news and we see something happen, we all want to make an immediate response. We want to be able to help, and we want to be able to do it through the lens of our organization and not necessarily another organization. So we're really trying to figure it out right now, but we're doing incredible work. And I'm very proud of what we've been able to do, particularly over the past 5 years to address critical human need.
We've really only got time for, we're slightly over the extended time that we had. So very quickly.
Brian Coleman, District Governor, Rotary in London. We're in London very proud to host 33 foundation scholars who are hosted by our clubs. They study at the great institutions in this city, the LSE, SOAS and Queen Mary and so on. But the vast majority of them are from the United States and Japan and occasionally Korea. Why isn't there more diversity in the foundation scholars?
That's a fascinating question, Brian. I've had a chance to be at two of our peace centers this year. One, the Makerere Center I mentioned earlier in Uganda, and also in Uppsala, our center in Sweden. The diversity of the Peace Fellows is incredible from every nation. I mean, there's not a duplicate of anyone within the room. So I'm not sure why there would be a disparity of more from one country coming into one area over another. Okay, so global grant scholars. Okay, you know what? I don't have a direct answer for you on that, and I'd like to look into it and be able to maybe delve into that a little bit more. But certainly, creating balance and equity is of the utmost importance. You and I both know that. So I'm not sure the answer to that. So why don't we connect offline on that? Thank you.
And you still have...
Yes, and we do have a global scholar sitting right here. From Germany, yes. And remind me of your name again. Felicity. Felicity is here from Germany, and so thank you very much for being one of the scholars representing the best and the brightest in our Rotary world. Yes, if you didn't hear that, she said, thank you for funding me.
All right. Well, I'm sorry to say that I think our time is very much up. This evening has turned out to be such a disrupted evening for one reason or another. So we would have had the room absolutely packed if it hadn't been for the strikes, which have really put been a bit of a blow to us. But nevertheless, you have done a wonderful job tonight. It's been quite inspiring to hear you talking about the work of Rotary, and I know that many of you here tonight are Rotarians, and I just want, as somebody who's been one myself, to congratulate you on a brilliant job that you're all doing. And I'm glad to hear that in the UK, Rotary membership is starting to pick up again. I mean, you know, all the strength to them. And in particular to you. I'm not sure how long your term runs from now, but good luck to you for the rest of your term, and thank you very much indeed.
Well, thank you, and let me just take an opportunity to thank you for guiding through a lovely discussion tonight. And while we may not have had the full room, quite honestly, that doesn't matter. It matters that we had wonderful people here who were engaged in our presentation and conversation, and I want to sincerely thank each and every one of you for whatever it took you to get through whatever travel and rain and umbrellas and everything else that you needed to do to get here. Thank you for doing that, and I truly appreciate you being part of our Rotary family, and thank you once again for leading a lovely discussion.
Bye.